So, I bet you're wondering what I bought for metal vinyl. Well, wonder no longer, because we're about to take a look at each and every one of these records, and what the hell, I'll even talk about them a little too. All of that coming up. Kicking things off with the 2019 EP from Solicitor. This is the self-titled release of theirs. It was followed, of course, by the 2020 LP release of Spectral Devastation. Of course, you might remember in a previous vinyl haul, I talked about that album, and that I was going to buy more from this band. Here we go. The band is fronted by Amy Lee Carlson, not to be confused with Amy Lee of Evanescence. Of course, Amy Lee Carlson sounds nothing like the Evanescence singer. She's much more aggressive. Think Leather Leone of Chastain, much more than, say, Doro or Burning Witches. Great band. Have a little bit of Exciter and Judas Priest in the mix, too, which is nice. Hints of it, at least. So, 6-song EP. Has 2 demo tracks as well. Night Stalker and Speed Tyrant. There's the band right there. Also, take a look at the vinyl. It is very much black, classic black. Also comes with an insert right here with the lyrics and another great picture of the band. Nice. My copy of this record also came with a really cool sticker. Hopefully you'll get one too. Definitely nice. So psyched to have this EP from this classic sounding speed metal band from Seattle. Definitely recommend checking into them, and definitely can't wait for a new album whenever that happens. The late 1970s and early 1980s were an interesting time. In Great Britain, of course, you had the new wave of British heavy metal era with bands like Diamond Head and Blitzkrieg and Venom coming up. But Los Angeles had their own scene going on at that period of time. Bands like Wasp and Motley Crue were coming up, but so is Dokken. And this is a compilation, came out in 2020. It's outtake tracks and demo tracks, most of which before their debut release of Breaking the Chains. Pretty interesting material. I should say, though, that 5 of the tracks on here are re-recorded versions of songs he had, but there was also some demo material. It definitely sounds demo-y, cleaned up a little bit, but definitely demos. And it's a nice mix. I think it's a good picture of what was going on with Dokken in their sort of pre-record label days. You get a nice mix, which is nice. To be fair, 6 of these tracks, 4 studio and 2 live, are also on their Back in the Streets EP, but the rest of it's definitely worth picking up for that. Or if you don't have that Back in the Streets EP, it's on here. As for the vinyl, it is classic black, custom disc labels on both sides. Also, there's the track listing for you. And there is a printed inner sleeve as well, with lyrics and some good pictures here. Also an explanation by Don Dokken about these early days. Some cool pictures. You might recognize this shot from a performance they did in Germany. That was on German television. It's on YouTube. I've seen it a zillion times. This is back when Juan Crucier was playing bass for them. And you can see him there as well. Definitely. Good stuff. Since I dig this band, this was definitely a worthy purchase. Great to hear early material that I hadn't heard before. It's also possible that we're never going to see another Dokken album ever again with the original lineup. They don't seem to get along very well, obviously. So this is good to have, just in case. Of course, everyone knows this album. This is Venom with Black Metal. This is their second album, originally released in 1982. This is the 2016 reissue, 2 LP set, second record of which is bonus tracks, which I'll get into shortly. By the way, artwork by Kronos. A lot of people don't know that. Kronos did the artwork on this cover. He also did the Neat Records logo. That's him as well. Kronos worked at Neat Records, in case you didn't know that. He was a tape-op. Covered that before. There you go. One weird thing about this release is that the At War with Satan intro that usually ends the original record is put on the beginning of side C on the second record. I don't know why it's not included at the end of side B like it normally is, but that's where they put it. This version came in black vinyl. What's interesting about that is Back on Black touted this as being a red record. And I thought I was buying a red record, but what that label often does, that distributor, take your pick, is that they put out records in a certain color, and then when they run out, they go to black. It's a bit misleading, and I don't know if I really think it's an ethical business practice, but there it is, fair warning. As for included material, all you get is this plain black inner sleeve, which is disappointing a little bit. You do get a cool gatefold, however. You get the full lyrics, as well as the What Was Satan intro and some credits here. This is definitely a reproduction from the original. It's just reverse field. Still hard to read in a weird scripty font. And also the pictures are a little dark, just like the In Nomine Satanas box set edition. The pictures on the 1982 original are a little bit easier to see. There is a guy in there. His name is Abaddon, but really hard to make out. Also, I think I would have preferred the neat LP version of Bloodlust. The version that's on here is a Radio 1 session. It's okay, I think, as a fan, curiosity, it's decent, but that studio version of Bloodlust is way better. What's funny about the track Bloodlust also is that it was included on certain editions of this album back in the early days. I had it on an import cassette, so I was very much used to hearing it between, I think, Raise the Dead and Teacher's Pet, anticipating it, and listening to this version and the other box set version I have. I'm like, where did the song go? I always have that moment of cognitive dissonance from when I was a teenager and expect that song, so there you go. Speaking of the Radio 1 sessions, I know I made Bloodlust sound not as great, but all of the sessions as a whole are really fantastic. I think they're the reason to re-buy this album entirely, because there's some really good stuff in there. Also, there's an outtake track, Hounds of Hell, that was not recorded on the Radio 1 sessions. It's an interesting track. The Radio 1 sessions, incidentally, were on the 2002 CD reissue of Black Metal, so if you have that, you know those tracks. And if you don't, another reason to buy. So yeah, get it for the bonus tracks. It's definitely worth it, especially if you don't have them. And if you do have them, then you should get this record anyways. Hell, you should own this album. This is a classic album. Why isn't it in your collection if it isn't? Next up is a 2017 compilation album of British bands. Yay, that's why it's called British Steel. These are modern metal bands, I should explain. Some of them are kind of trapped in the Nawabum sound, and that ranges, of course, like that scene did, between hard rock and more of the sort of Iron Maiden influence stuff. You're going to get both on this album and more, but it's not firmly stuck in nostalgia. I mean, there's also some very modern metal sounding bands on here, delving into power metal and thrash metal. So there's a nice mix on this record. And speaking of the bands, we have Amulet, Aggressive Perfector, Eliminator, Dungeon, Dark Forest, Toledo Steel, Vuil, Seven Sisters, Insurgency, Neuron Spoiler, and Witch Hazel. I've covered some of these bands before. Obviously, Neuron Spoiler I've talked about. I've probably mentioned Aggressive Perfector here and there. And yeah, and Amulet maybe. So most of these bands are coming off the Dissonance Productions label out of the UK, which makes sense because they're the ones who put this compilation together. It is distroed by Back on Black. You can see their name on the back, but this is definitely Dissonance Productions bands and the label for sure. Of course, I have some favorites on this album. Aggressive Perfector's Harlot's Spell is pretty cool. Eliminator with Lost to the Void, great song. Toledo Steel, love their song Rock Nights, great song. And of course, Neuron Spoiler with Slay the Beast. Great band, good track. It does end on a bit of a mellow note, though, with the Witch Hazel track Freedom Battle. I like it, but I just don't think it's a proper album closer. Of course, you probably want to check out the vinyl. It is white with red and blue splatter, which makes sense given the colors of the UK flag. There's the other side there, custom labels. So a good mix on this one. Also, if you're wanting to discover some new British metal bands, definitely a little something for everyone on this one. Next up is the 6th album for Ignitor. This is Haunted by Rock and Roll. They're a traditional metal band slash power metal band from Texas, but they also have some thrash and some speed and some groove. They're basically all over the place in a lot of respects. By the way, this came out in 2017. Of course, the notable member in this band is the vocalist. It's Jason McMaster. He, of course, was the lead singer of Dangerous Toys. He also went on to a band called Watchtower, which I recommend you check out. But after Watchtower, of course, he did Ignitor. He came into this band after a few years of their existence. Ignitor sounds like a Judas Priest song without actually being one. I mentioned Judas Priest, of course, because McMaster's voice does tip into Painkiller-era Rob Halford from here and there, but also there's some other hard rock and heavy metal styles that he gets into throughout the songs. So it's not too heavy into one thing, interestingly. Of course, I mentioned Dangerous Toys before. I should tell you this is nothing like Dangerous Toys. This is far more heavy metal from that band's more hard rock style. As for this cover art, it's pretty amazing. I definitely would have loved to have this set up as a teenager with my record player and all that stuff. That would have been very cool. Would have freaked out the family. Definitely have a few favorites on this album. The opening track to Brave the War, great song. Leather Forever, a little bit of Judas Priest in that song for sure. And No Sanctuary. You should check out all 3 of those tracks. As for other tracks, there's Hatchet, the Ballad of Victor Crowley, which is, of course, about the movie Hatchet. The chorus has sort of a heavier pop metal thing going on in its chorus, which would make it kind of interesting to have had that type of song in an 80s horror movie soundtrack. It definitely has that sort of a sound. McMaster is also channeling a bit of Alice Cooper, who's a hero of his. He also did that in the track Scared for Dangerous Toys, but again, this is not Dangerous Toys, so don't conflate that. Interesting track, pretty cool. Of course, according to the hype sticker, this is the first time it's been on vinyl. Obviously, it was on other formats before that. Also, I'll show you the vinyl. It is amazing. I really like this one a lot. I love the custom label there, clearly, but the colors are pretty amazing. The black and white, and maybe there's some yellow splatter in the red. And there is the other side. Yeah, they did a nice job on this particular splatter vinyl. Yeah, really like it. And it fits. It fits the vibe of the record totally. Also, we've got an inner sleeve here. This is actually an actual inner sleeve. How about that? Picture of the band. You might recognize him. And full lyrics as well. Of course, I should also not forget there is a poster with this album. It is basically the album cover, but a little different. It's a little bit, you got the band picture down there, playing with some corpse paint, which makes no sense given the sound of the band, but, you know, why not? So it's a really fun record. It's metal in some parts, it's hard rock in others, but it's definitely solid and heavy in general. It's having a good time with itself too. You can kind of tell a little bit by the artwork, but also by that inner picture there. I definitely recommend this record, and you should probably check into more material from them, which I'm going to do for sure. I mean, this is their 6th album. They have others, so there you go. Next up is the debut 4-song EP from Thunderdome. This is The Man of Rolling Thunder. Came out 2018 through Temple of Mystery Records. And of course, you might know that I've mentioned Temple of Mystery Records before. In fact, in the last Vinyl Haul, I talked about that label a bit. I'm also going to talk about the label one more time because my next record is also from that same label. So you should definitely check into them. Good Canadian metal. So some great driving guitars in here. There's a bit of power metal going on. It also skitters into hard rock territory as well, which is pretty cool. There's a nice variety of tempos on this record, which is really nice because, you know, a lot of the retro metal bands, this band is a little bit retro, to be honest. They tend to go in this sort of one-tempo run. Not this record. It's actually pretty nice. The vocalist has a sort of alternating gruff and falsetto thing going on with his voice. It's pretty fun. The album is a little underproduced, which is kind of okay. The album itself, the material on the album is very strong. So I think better production going forward would help this band out immensely because the material is decent. It holds up. Of the 4 tracks, my favorite is definitely the title track, The Man of Rolling Thunder, on side A. Great stuff. I'll show you the vinyl as well. It is a swamp green vinyl, which is kind of hard to see. There's the Temple of Mystery label there. I love their logo. And there you go with that. Also, there is a lyric sheet here on plain old paper, but in cream. Nice paper color. There you go. As far as how I got this album, it was definitely a bit of a blind buy. I've bought records from Temple of Mystery before. In fact, I had bought one in particular, and there was an ad card inside of it for other bands. And I read the descriptions of the bands, and this one sounded really interesting. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to pull the trigger, buy it, see if I like it. And I'm glad I did. I kind of lucked out on this one. Overall, this is a promising fledgling release from this band. Again, I think greater production would help them out, but also you can hear this sound is just starting to grow. So I'm really interested to see what they do on future releases because they're pretty decent. Also, they're on Bandcamp if you want to check them out. Next up is the 2020 debut album from this Canadian heavy rock band. This is Freeways. The album is called True Bearings. Definitely a late 70s sound here. You can hear some influences from Thin Lizzy and UFO and AC/DC. In fact, this probably would have been called heavy metal back then, like those bands were. Also, you could imagine them opening for Kiss on the Love Gun tour. They definitely have that kind of heavy rock sound from that era. In addition to those influences that you can clearly hear, I also catch some early career Def Leppard. At least I do. Maybe more Pete Willis than Phil Collin. Listen to the opening riff and the title track. You're definitely going to hear a little bit of early Def Leppard, for sure. As for the vinyl variant, it's definitely translucent red. There's the Temple of Mystery label there as well. Limited to 300 copies. You can go to their Bandcamp page. That's where you'll get this album for the most part. They might have some left. Seems like they do at the time of this recording. Also, we have a full lyrics insert and a nice little band collage. Yeah, they're outdoorsy. Look at that. As for favorites, there are 2 music video tracks, or definitely 2 of my favorites. That would be for Eternal Light, Eternal Night, and Battered and Bruised. Both great tracks. I also like the title track a whole lot. I would recommend all 3 of those if you're wanting to check out this band. And it's nice that those are the tracks that they're pushing, them or the label, because you can hear an album sometimes and you're like, why did you choose that as a single? That makes no sense. That other song is way better. But really, those are the 3 tracks that are really standing out on top. So you should check them out. Also, I want to thank Scott Waters of No Life Till Metal for turning me on to this record. He showed it on his channel, so I'm showing it on mine. So there you go. Thank you, Scott. Great stuff. So while it's not strictly metal, it is a really great heavy rock album. I would definitely recommend checking it out. And I know I've been spinning it a whole lot, so I definitely stand behind it. Coming up next is a band you may or may not have heard of. This is Seax with Speed Metal Mania. Came out in 2016. It's their 3rd album. They hail from Worcester, Massachusetts, just like High Command. Also, just like me at one point. I spent a lot of my teen years and some of my preteen years growing up in Worcester, so I know that scene pretty well. So it's nice to see a band from the hometown. So Seax has had a bit of a sort of punky metal thing going for them, and by punk I don't mean hardcore, I don't mean crossover, I actually mean punk rock. But of course there's a speed metal thing going on here as well. They're definitely that kind of band. A little bit of Exciter thrown in. I don't think that's an accident, considering there's the Exciter patch for Heavy Metal Maniac right there, and their album is also called Speed Metal Mania. So there's obviously a little influence there. Yeah, for sure. This is also where we see a switch out of vocalists. Steve is out, Carmine is in. I like Carmine's voice a lot. I think there's more punch in his delivery than the previous guy. I think he fits in quite well with this band. So if you haven't heard this band in a while, you should check in on this album, starting with this album. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. He's definitely an upgrade. They also have a much newer album out. It's their latest album called Fallout Rituals. You should definitely check into that. I know I'm going to, and I'll probably show it on a future episode of Vinyl Haul. So there you go. Consider yourself warned. As for favorite tracks, I do love the title track quite a bit, but I also like Leather and Spikes. I think that one's a real standout track. Yeah. So vinyl variant for this one is Classic Black. Got some nice custom labels there. And cool design there. In fact, if you want to see that design a little bit larger, there is an insert that has just that. Nice. It looks better bigger. And of course, we've got some pictures and some credits there as well. Also in here is a promo sheet for Diabolic Might Records. In case you want to check out some of the other bands on that label. Hell Ripper has a couple of releases, as do some other folks. That's Diabolic Might Records. Only vinyl is real. So, of course, Seax is on Bandcamp. You should also check them out on YouTube. There are a lot of club shows that they've done live on YouTube, especially at Ralph's, which is a great club in Worcester, if I can plug them quickly. Anyways, it's a fun album. You should definitely check it out. Of course, everyone knows Dee Snider from his classic band Twisted Sister. This is from his solo band. This is the 4th album he's done as a solo artist. It's called For the Love of Metal. Came out in 2018. Great stuff. And like I warned you before with the Ignitor album, this sounds nothing like Twisted Sister, so get that out of your brain. This is definitely Dee in prime form, aggressive melodic vocals over top a much heavier band than Twisted Sister, as I mentioned before. In fact, a lot of folks have kind of wondered whether or not Twisted Sister was a true metal band. You can have that argument if you want in the comments or elsewhere, but there's really no doubt on this record. This is a solid heavy metal album. And the album's on Napalm Records, so you know they're in good company. The record's produced by Jamie Jasta of Hatebreed. He also helped write most, if not all, of the music of some other folks. But again, another warning, this is not Hatebreed. Definitely some great favorites on here for me as well. Lies Are a Business is great. I'm Ready. Running Mazes is probably the one I get stuck in my head the most. And despite some of the goofy lyrics, I do love the title track, For the Love of Metal. Good stuff. I should mention that there's this occasional skittering into 90s metalcore, like the early stuff. Think Life of Agony. The track I Am the Hurricane definitely comes to mind. Also, I probably should show you the inside there. Full lyrics, in case that's a thing for you. As for the vinyl, it is silver. It appears opaque, but if you hold it up to the light, you can see through it. Great labels as well. It says strictly limited edition on the back, but no numbers are given, so who knows how strictly limited that really is. You just have to take their word for it. There are also 2 music videos from this album, one for Tomorrow's No Concern and one for Become the Storm. You should definitely check both of those out. So I've always been a fan of Dee Snider. I loved him in Twisted Sister. I've liked him in some of the other projects he's had. In fact, I do have his autobiography, Shut Up and Give Me the Mic, and it is very much signed. So I met him, hung out with him for a little while. We talked about all sorts of stuff, including the time they played in Worcester, Massachusetts back in early 1986. He remembered the show vividly, including the one guy in the front row who was a bit of a jerk-off. So I was like, wow, good memory, Dee. So hearing this 65-year-old man crank out an amazing metal album while still retaining his signature melodic sound definitely means that this album is right up my alley. I love this record. You might like it too. You should check it out. And of course, here's another record you might recognize. This is Anthrax with Persistence of Time. It was their 5th album when it was originally released in 1990. This is the 2020 remastering. It's on 4 LPs, which I'll show you shortly. And by the way, thank you for the dent, Amazon. So since all of the records look relatively similar, I'm just going to show you one of the 4. They are an orange and black swirl. 3 sides of these records are dedicated to the album itself, and then 5 whole sides are bonus tracks, which is really the reason to get this album, if you already have it. And if you don't, just get it anyways. So bonus material on this record includes some live material. Also, there's an interview that's not listed on the back, but it's on there. A pretty good one with Scott and Charlie talking about the making of Persistence of Time, what was going on before with the band and all of that. Also, there are some pre-production tracks on here, quite a few, as well as what they call tracking tracks, basically similar to pre-production, basically. What's really fun is there are some tracks called vocal guide tracks, where Scott Ian sings the lyrics that he probably wants Joey to work out and make better. He is kind of joking around on the tracks vocally, so he's not really trying to be a good singer, but it's still really kind of odd to hear Scott Ian singing badly Persistence of Time songs. So it's a bit of a novelty there. I think you'll enjoy it either way. So I just wanted to show you the gatefold. Amazing, all the ephemera of the time, some cool images, some of the magazines they were in. The bonus tracks, by the way, there are 14 of them, which is pretty cool. So it's, again, well worth the rebuy. Also, this album comes with an insert, which is in here somewhere. There we go. It's an image from the time period, as well as lyrics that are impossible to read without a microscope. Jesus. I would like to see this kind of treatment also given to other classic albums like Among the Living and Spreading the Disease. I think that'd be amazing if Charlie or Scott could rustle up some pre-production tracks from those albums, or bonus tracks, or some other cool live stuff. Something to think about. And of course, since it's me, I have to mention that there's a fun typo on the spine. I'll put a graphic of it right down there. As you can see, persistence instead of persistence, which is fun. No one at the label caught that. Amazing. So I've had this album on one format or another since it came out in 1990. It's nice to finally have it on vinyl, let alone 4 albums. Pretty incredible. Maybe it was out on vinyl in the early 90s. I'm not really sure. If it was, it would have had to have been for the European market. Europe kept pressing records well into the 90s when America stopped. But it's nice to have, especially for these amazing bonus tracks. I mean, they really make the buy well worth it. Also, the sound is pretty fantastic. It sounds great. You know, if you're into that sort of thing. And as promised, the one record I got for Record Store Day Drops in September of 2020 is the reissue of this album. This is Nativity in Black, a tribute to Black Sabbath. Originally came out in 1994. As the hype sticker says, this is the first time it was ever released on vinyl in the US. Also, it comes in black and clear. They call it Black Swirl. I'm going to go with Black Smoke because that's the definition I've seen a lot more with this type of record. And I like the labels a lot too. Very dense with text. And why not? Of course, Black Sabbath cover songs is what's going on this record, obviously. A lot of the bands are very 90s, not all, but a lot of them. We have Megadeth, White Zombie, Biohazard, Sepultura, Ozzy Osbourne with Therapy? I always feel like I have to say that as a question because of the question mark. Anyways, Corrosion of Conformity's on here. Bruce Dickinson with Godspeed. Ugly Kid Joe, probably a surprise band there. Faith No More. Also a project called Bullring Brummies. Rob Halford, Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, Brian Tilsa, I don't know who that is, and Wino. Also Typo Negative, and then a band called 1000 Homo DJs, which is Al Jorgensen of Ministry, realistically. Some great tracks. Just show you the insert there. You got your credits and how the album was made and all of that. Also interesting way that they've chosen to show the bands and the songs in these interesting tarot card designs. Just to rattle off some of my favorites, first and foremost, Sepultura doing Symptom of the Universe is amazing. Early Sepultura has always been really good with covers anyways. Think Biotech is Godzilla off Chaos AD, but there's also Orgasmatron, the Motorhead song. That was on the B-side of the Under Siege single. Great stuff there. Megadeth's Paranoid is okay. I don't know how excited I am about that. But I definitely dig Typo Negative's version of Black Sabbath, the song. It's purely done like Typo Negative, you know? I like that with cover tunes when they make it their own. That's definitely, and it's a great album closer too. Perfect track. Definitely would have saved it for last. So as I said before, first time in the US on vinyl. Europe did get this record back then on vinyl, as well as Brazil back in '94. So that's pretty interesting. If you want to track down one of the original ones of those, good luck, I guess. So yeah, I'm really psyched to have this album. I mean, I loved it back then. I love it now. I think there are a couple interesting bands on here that are, again, very 90s. Biohazard. I forgot Biohazard even existed. And, you know, the Faith No More, I should mention the Faith No More version of War Pigs on here is not the studio version. It's a live version. So if you're expecting the studio, you get an extra treat with the live one. So anyways, this is Nativity in Black, a tribute to Black Sabbath. And that's it for another episode of Vinyl Haul. Definitely let me know in the comments which ones you liked, which ones you didn't like. Maybe you went to Record Store Day Drops in September as well. Maybe you got some other records. Tell me about those and anything else relevant in the comments below. And of course, as I say, every damn time, like, subscribe, and share. 3 great ways to support this network. It is the Accusation Network, after all, where I do metal vinyl collecting videos once or twice a week. Check out the playlist, check out the videos. Definitely good stuff. And of course, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.